because we must be able to assess ourselves and become very aware, because remember, the more self-aware we are, the better decisions we make, not just in leading others, but initially leading ourselves. It's very difficult to celebrate somebody else if I can't celebrate myself. It's very difficult to empower a platform for someone else when I haven't established a solid platform on the inside of me. So we have to determine, what is the loudest voice on the inside of me? Is it an external voice, or is it that internal innate voice? So the fact is, we, through our family of origin, our teaching, our experiential reality, and our culture, it literally can put a lid on what we were purposed for, our DNA, our identity, and our purpose. And many of us live our lives in that way. And you can see that who I am didn't seem like it was acceptable in my culture, or among my peers, or in my school, or in my family. So who I am innately got put in this little box. And many of us are trying to find fulfillment when who we really are is locked in a box on the inside of me. And I want to share, I have an amazing intern. And this intern, highly intelligent person, an engineer, very equipped. But when they came to intern under me, they were really frustrated in so many ways. And as I began to help them discover their innate core contribution, they began to get so excited. And it only took about 3 hours of working with them. Within a few hours, what they struggled with the majority of their lives, now they came to a resolution, because what they were doing is they were trying to conform to the external pressure. You know, what family wanted, what society wanted, what was needed, and all these different things. And they were living frustrated. And when I helped them to discover their core value, they got all excited, and they came to me and they said, Melodye, you have just given me permission to be who I was purposed to be. And they said, but not everybody accepts this. And I said, well, I want you to know, you serving in this organization, guess what? We give you freedom to be you. And because I understood their core contribution, I literally created around them the ability to release what they were best at and what they were most passionate about. But when they first came, they were living with that limitation. And so that limitation literally was muting their voice. It was twisting or silencing their purpose voice. So what happens when that limitation is there, now my voice is just an echo of someone else rather than being who I am innately. And then what that does is it brings us to a place of frustration, and we're wondering why we're not satisfied in this job. So we go get another job, and then we go get another job, and then we go get another job. The job is not the problem. It is literally the frustration of the squelching of our voices. And so we are hindering that innate contribution. We're hindering the motivation that is in our very DNA. And there's like this big veil before us that we can't really see how to release that, because we do not have a conscious awareness of who we are. So we're out there groping in the dark, looking for something that satisfies, when guess what? Instead of looking out, we need to look in. And that's why I love these tools. That's why I love behavioral science. That's why I love the core value index, because in the midst of all these things, the more self-aware I am, I move from those subconscious choices to deliberate choices. So when that limitation is there from the external values, it begins to pervert. It begins to push me to develop skills to meet my need, rather than releasing and giving and contributing to society. So the fact is, what happens when things are perverted? I think, okay, I've got to make a living. I got to have some money. So I'll just develop this skill so I can make some money and provide for my family. And you know what? There's times in our life that we do that. There's times where we just have to do some natural things to get some natural results. But the fact is, Our goal is to be on a journey to discover what our voice truly is so that our gifts and our role meet so we can walk in a fullness of actualization. But when that limitation is there, this is the biggest challenge. It literally fosters fear in our life. And I make more decisions out of fear than I do out of my innate contribution. And see, that fear, it pushes me then to live in a self-focused, needs-motivated way so that I'm just focusing on what I need. I'm just focusing on the things that benefit me rather than living a life of contribution. So really, we're coming to a place where we must recognize that we must get out of this extrinsically influenced box. And so let me tell you one thing that boxes us in, and that is personality. Now, it's very important for us to understand our personality, but we must recognize our personality was developed to meet our own needs. From the age of birth to 3 years old, 75% of your personality is established. And by the time you're 7 years old, your personality is firmly rooted on the inside of you. And what is personality? Well, this is just the way I am. No, it's not. Your personality is what you develop to meet your need. So, in my example, going through molestation in those formable foundation years literally caused me to meet my need. I don't believe based upon my innate contributions. I don't believe based upon who I was purposed to be, but based upon survival. Based upon what I needed to be and what I needed to do so that I could cope with life, so that I could survive in the midst of challenges, so I could deal with all the things that were fostering fear, so that I could fit into my family or fit in to wherever I was. And we don't want to live our lives like that. So our personality really is adapted behavior. It's not necessarily purpose or innate, but it is adapted. Now, I will say that many times our adapted contributions cause our personality to lean in one way or another. But the fact is, my personality is still adapted. I need to understand it. I'll always have my personality. This is a part of my expression because I've spent my lifetime learning to function that way. But when I recognize that that is not necessarily innately who I am, then instead of making a decision that's meeting my need, I make a decision to contribute. And that's really powerful. So, part of what keeps us in a box is just saying, well, that's my personality. I'm this alpha person, and that's just the way I talk to people. No, that's not true. We don't want to do that. Secondly, is our adapted values, and I talked about those pretty exhaustively, but the fact is, our socialization framework can change our adapted values, our adapted motivations in as little as 6 months. And so we must recognize that just because I'm in agreement with all those around me, that might not be really who I am. And see, we must recognize when it comes to adapted values, it can come through teaching, but it also can come through a traumatic event. So when I go through something very, very difficult, it can reshape my adapted values, putting my innate, unchanging contribution in a box. Thirdly, is my needs-driven demands. Kind of talking about my personality once again. But this is where I develop the skills to meet my need rather than releasing my motivated purpose. And that's why it's important for us to learn why behind the what. Not just what I'm doing, but why am I doing what I'm doing? And when I can look at the why, I'll say, that came externally. That I sound like my mother there, or I sound like my father there, or I sound like my boss there, rather than discovering why I really have communicated that. And that's really important, and it puts us in a box. And lastly is when there is extrinsic control. And I know all of us at some point in times in our life, especially we're growing, advancing, we need extrinsic control. We need some accountability. We need support system. We need mentors and all those things. That's really important. But I'm talking about really when we feel the pressure to conform to the courts of public opinion so I'm not rejected, so I don't lose my job, so I'm not fired, so I'm not pushed out of culture, as it were, and I have all this pressure coming in. Oh my gosh, if I don't be a yes man, if I don't just conform to what they're saying, guess what? This is not going to be good for me. And you know what that's doing to my contribution? It is putting it in that proverbial box. And so now I'm living my life out of fears. I'm living my life feeling like a failure. I'm afraid to take a risk. I'm afraid of loss. I'm afraid of rejection. And now I'm living in a powerless mindset. And that is so destructive, because when you feel powerless, you have just positioned your mind to view yourself as a victim. And we were not designed to be powerless, and we were not designed to be a victim.